So our next panel this morning is Emerging Delmarva Industries. We have presenters who are going to talk about wellness, broadband, and offshore wind. So I'd like to call up to the stage Steve Leonard, President CEO of Tidal Health, Matt Drew, Offshore Infrastructure Construction Manager with Orsted, and Neil Stegman, Operations Manager with Blue Surf. So gentlemen, please come up, take the stage. So this was a topic that the committee talked about months ago, about bringing up these business leaders to talk about industries that are emerging. Some relationship to these industries emerging quicker than others due to the pandemic, but certainly the pandemic has raised everyone's awareness of wellness. Broadband is a critical infrastructure issue that needs to be addressed, especially in rural areas across the United States. And offshore wind, whether you like it or not, is here. And it's an alternative energy resource, and it's going to bring lots of jobs and lots of economic prosperity to the state. So we'll start off with Steve Leonard, President CEO of Tidal Health, then we'll move down to Matt Drew, and then to Neil, and we will have time for Q&A. So as you hear these gentlemen speak, please think of some questions to ask. Steve.
Thank you for that. That's why you're my broadband provider. Okay, good morning. Again, my name is Steve Leonard. Thank you for attending. Thank you to SU for hosting this great event on an annual basis. So we're here to talk about emerging industries. I wish we could emerge in some ways and move on. I will give my obligatory 2 minutes to COVID. That seems to be obviously the topic of the day in many ways. If you roll back the clock to 1917, the global pandemic back then lasted actually 3 years. So we are 2 years into our COVID pandemic. We've had 5 distinct surges at Tidal Health, and our last surge started in mid-August, and it started slowing down in November, which was nice to see. Although I will tell you, we had massive volumes Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this week, coincidentally 4 to 5 days after what? Thanksgiving. So food, family, and COVID sharing. So that is my pitch. Please, about a third of our patients being admitted these days are vaccinated. Okay, so while obviously they're less likely to die from COVID, please make sure you get your boosters. Okay, it does help, and it is needed. So we don't expect to be emerging from COVID anytime soon. If you think about another year left in this, we expect ebbs and flows for this, and then eventually to settle into a seasonal endemic like the flu did for 50 years in the middle of the 1900s after the first pandemic. So I don't know if I'm supposed to bring positive news to this discussion or not, but that is the reality of our world these days. So for Tidal Health, it really is all about how do we do what we're trying to do with the fact we're taking care of another infectious disease. It's not going anywhere. We usually have 30, 40 patients in the building with COVID, but we are working hard to get back to whatever our new normal is, because quite honestly, that's just as important, if not more important. I will tell you at Tidal Health, we've been focusing on 3 things: access, effectiveness, and engagement. So from an access perspective, really trying to keep people healthy and well and out of the hospital. That's really been our mission, and for the last 10 years, 12 years, we've been working hard on it. Obviously, right before COVID, we went through the mergers, so we became Tidal Health actually only a year ago. Most of our access these days is in rapidly growing areas of the region that we've been talking about. Actually, Sussex County is probably where our largest expansion is at this point. Have about $100 million going into a 150,000 square foot campus right off Route 13 north of Millsboro. So we are entering the final stages with DelDOT. Delaware and even DelDOT, believe it or not, have been very good to work with through this process. So we hope to break ground sometime maybe over the summer of next year, and then open up services to serve the eastern side of Sussex County. The intent with this expansion obviously is to bring care close to home, keep people healthy and well, but if they need services, complex services like open heart, neurosurgery, the high-end complexity, folks would come to Salisbury. All of the other stuff, we would bring them over to Nanticoke, Tidal Health Nanticoke and Seaford for services. So access is crucially important. Effectiveness, we have to maintain high quality, and we have to do it while we're in this mode. It has been challenging. Hospitals across the country have seen volumes like we've never seen before, and not COVID volumes. We have this theory out there of deferred maintenance for folks. During COVID, people separated in some ways from healthcare. They did not, maybe some people in this room, did not see their primary care physicians as we should, perhaps not participated in screenings as we should. And we've got to maintain high quality and get back to those types of things, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. Finally, the engagement side of this conversation. So really, how do we engage with the community? We were very popular during COVID. Our website had more hits than you could possibly imagine. Less so now because people want to move on for it. But if we want to keep people healthy and well, we have to make sure they're engaged. That starts with our own workforce, quite frankly. We are incredibly challenged right now, like most folks in this room. I came late, but I can imagine the conversation so far. Workforce, workforce, workforce. I can't have quality without workforce. Right now we have 450 openings at Tidal Health for full-time, well-paying jobs. We changed our compensation to $15 an hour back in September. We've just injected $6 million into nursing wages specifically. And really it is all about how do we bring on and improve the workforce. We're doing some really innovative things. We put out an ad a couple months ago. So do you want to be in healthcare? And we actually hired 70 people on our way to 100 people who have no healthcare experience. And we're paying for them to be aides. We're paying for them to go through CNA class. We're paying them to work on the floor while they're going through class and provide benefits. And hopefully, and we actually graduated our first class of 16, I believe. We're working with Warwick on that. So Ray, thank you very much. I see you back there. And really, how do we build our own on Delmarva? And again, we raised our wages to $15 an hour, but healthcare can't handle inflation like that. We can't raise our latte prices, even though we're competing against some places that sell latte. So our philosophy at Tidal Health is how do we provide more skills so we can raise wages commensurate with skills. So we want to take our CNAs, we want to put them in nursing school, and we want to continue growing all aspects of our team. So looking forward to some really getting back to things with our friends at Warwick, Deltech, UMES, and SU about scholarshiping, promoting, and again, increasing the workforce. We're also doing that with medical residencies. So we had, right now we're getting ready to identify 10 physicians to be medical residents at Tidal Health for internal medicine. They will come next summer. We had 2,500 medical students apply for our first residency at Tidal Health. So really exciting. And we will start a residency each year for the next probably 5 years. So general surgery is getting ready to start in the summer of 23. Again, how do we improve the pipeline of the healthcare team needed to take care of all of us here on the shore? So let me get back to wellness and what can we all be doing from a wellness perspective. I will tell you, going back to the volumes that we're seeing, unlike anything we've seen, we're practically back to pre-COVID days, if not higher in our emergency departments. We have folks coming in with conditions that, quite honestly, it's the deferred maintenance. It is very real. I would encourage all of you as business owners, we're trying to figure out how to do it. It's not easy, but how do you encourage your teams to get better connected with healthcare? Because what we're seeing are people coming to the hospital with stuff that could have been fixed a heck of a lot sooner that is really complex at that point in time. It might not be your team members, but it might be their parents. It might be their aunts or uncles. It might be their loved ones. But how do you make time? Because honestly, from a business perspective, we're all going to pay for it one way or the other, aren't we? So please make that time. You can go to the Tidal Health webpage and find a doctor. And we've got appointments out there. You can schedule online these days. Pretty good access. You might have to take your first appointment in Snow Hill as opposed to Salisbury. I live in Snow Hill. We're not that far. But we'll get you back to Salisbury at some point in time if you live in Salisbury. So there is flexibility within the network. We have 50 locations, 24 different specialties throughout 7 counties at this point. So that's my advice to all of us. And support our teams getting better connected with healthcare. Support their families getting better connected with healthcare, because really that is what is going to be part of our challenge going forward. Is if we don't get this under control, we're going to be spending more money than we need to be on healthcare. So I'll look forward to questions, but again, thank you for the opportunity, and looking forward to continuing servicing all of us, all of you, obviously for many years to come. So thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Matt Drew. I'm the onshore infrastructure construction manager for Orsted. That's a real mouthful. Basically, I'm the guy who builds everything that's on land that helps the offshore wind project happen. So it's great to be here again today. This is the 4th time I've had the opportunity to address this economic forecast. So Bill, thanks for the multiple invitations. Maybe I haven't said something wrong in the past, so you keep extending me invitations to me, so I appreciate that greatly. One of the things I want to talk today about is first off, for those that you don't know about our company, we'll provide a little background. provide some insight in terms of the exciting projects that we have going on. But before I get into that presentation, I want to thank the panelists that came before us. I noted that every one of the counties except for Somerset County, we're doing something in there right now. So this time next year, we're going to figure out how to correct that situation, Danny. So greatly appreciate the work that you all do. All right. So a little bit about our company. We started off as the Danish oil and natural gas company about 80 years ago. We were a truly ingrained black energy company. We explored, developed offshore oil and gas resources. We had thermal energy plants. We were in a lot of ways if you will, the Delmarva power in some ways of Denmark. We operated generation, we operated distribution. And about 25 years ago, we made a wholesale change and a decision that strategy and that direction was not going to be sustainable for our company. And so what we've done is between that point, that inflection point in our business arc to today, we've become the largest offshore wind developer in the world. 3 out of every 4 offshore wind turbines that's spinning is one that we developed. We have over 760 gigawatts of installed capacity. We have about another 250,000 megawatts that are in development right now, including some of the projects that I'm going to be talking about. We developed the first offshore wind farm in 1991, and then actually 2 years ago, we decommissioned that. So we truly have a cradle-to-grave level of experience in terms of not just building offshore wind farms, but operating and maintaining them throughout their entire life cycle. So we're pretty proud of that. There's a few projects here. The first offshore wind farm here in the U.S. Was built in 2016, 3 miles off the coast of Block Island in Rhode Island. It's 5 turbines that produce 30 megawatts of power into the grid in Long Island. We built for Dominion Energy last summer, right in the middle of COVID, a 2-turbine demonstration project for Dominion Energy, 27 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach, that's in service now. We've built the world's largest offshore wind farm, which is in England. It's called Hornsea 1. And then, as I mentioned, the Vindeby project, we were able to see that through its entire life and retire that. So we kind of have experience in the full aspects of developing offshore wind. Here on the East Coast, we're really excited about this as a market because we have, this is a little bit of an eye chart of a slide, but all of the kind of polygons that you see running up and down the coast, those are different wind energy areas that have been established by the federal government. They've been bid on, and then each state has plans to procure offshore energy from those wind energy areas. So here you see, this is Maryland's procurement. Right now we have, as a state, we've agreed to buy 348 megawatts of power from offshore wind energy, but we have aspirations to add another 1.2 gigawatts of power through the Clean Energy Jobs Act that passed in 2020 here in Maryland. So Maryland is on its way. You will see that it's kind of on the left side of these bar charts comparing to other states. If you look at the state of Virginia, Virginia has aspirations to be much greater than us, and as well as our neighbors to the north in New Jersey as well. So we're in a good spot, but we need to continue the momentum in terms of continuing to have plans to purchase power to still stay in somewhat of a leadership position as a state. The fundamentals of why offshore wind is exciting here for the East Coast of the U.S. is that we've got kind of the triple crown of parameters that make it really desirable. We've got huge electrical demand. You can see the left-hand portion of this slide is a nighttime picture of all the cities that are on the East Coast, and how much power they're using is kind of proportional to the illumination. Within that area, we also have a pretty aging generation infrastructure. Many of the plants that are in this area are in the 40, 50, 60 year range where they're hitting the end of their life cycle, and there's going to be a need to replace those. So as those plants cycle out, we're looking forward to take advantage of that to build new generation and then install into the same grid connection from that old out-of-life power plant. The resource is fantastic in terms of wind speed. You can see the center slide shows you that we've got very, very favorable conditions. And then on the right side, we actually have a relatively shallow continental shelf depth that makes constructing in these areas easier than some other areas. If you looked at the depths right off of shore in places like California or the Asia Pacific, Japan, where depths quickly go off soundings when you just go a mile offshore, makes it very, very difficult with current technology to build. We don't have that case on the east coast of the U.S. So these are the reasons why you're seeing so many of those development areas be established and are going to be moving forward fairly quickly in the future. This is a slide that kind of gives you just an overview of our company's project pipeline. We have 6 active projects, including the 2 that I'm going to talk about today, that are in the development process. We're awaiting award of or notification from the state of Maryland about a new project that we have in Maryland. But of these projects, some of these are now actually going into construction. We received word 2 weeks ago that the South Forth Wind project that we're developing off of the coast of the Long Island has been given its record of decision. So that's going to be moving forward. We're looking forward to notice to move forward with other projects off of Atlantic City with our Ocean Wind 1 project. So we're starting to see a thawing, if you will, of decision making on the permitting side from the federal government that's allowing all of our projects, as well as other developers' projects. You may have read recently that the 800 megawatt Vineyard Wind project was approved off of the coast of Martha's Vineyard. So projects that have been a little bit stalled for some time are actually starting to move forward, and we're excited to see that. Our Skipjack 1 project, this was a project that was awarded to Orsted in 2017. This is a 120 megawatt project that's directly off of the coast of Delaware. We call it a Maryland-based project because the Maryland Public Service Commission and in essence is the offtake owner of the power that we're going to generate. So I live here in Maryland. I actually walked to the event here today. As a power consumer here in Maryland, I will be paying a little bit higher rate on my power, no more than $1 a month, roughly, when this project goes into effect. But in exchange for that, we get some of the great economic benefits that our company is committing to the state of Maryland as part of our agreement to sell power into Maryland. So this is 120 megawatts. We're planning on 2026 as our date for completion of commercial operations and starting up of the or construction operations and starting up of the project. But in addition to that, we also have a second Skipjack project. We call that creatively Skipjack 2. Skipjack 2 is a much larger project. We're seeking approval to bring in another 760 megawatts, so almost 7 times the size of Skipjack 1 into the state of Maryland. We've submitted a bid to the Public Service Commission. We're at the very end of the bid review process, and we're hoping that by December 17th we get an early Christmas present at Orsted, and we get a favorable notice back from the Maryland Public Service Commission. Our intention would be that with that award we would build Skipjack 1 and Skipjack 2 simultaneously. So 760 megawatts for Skipjack 2 added to the 120 that we already have approved. So we would be developing an 880 megawatt project. So it'd be a really nice size project for us locally. One of the things that I think is the most exciting, and a lot of people have heard me talk about offshore wind. If you've had to sit through my presentations before, I apologize for repeating a lot of things. But Maryland's approach to offshore wind was a very forward-looking approach. When the Public Service Commission granted us the contract to build our Skipjack 1 project, and likewise when we get the award for our Skipjack 2 project. Cost was important. Having control to not have excessive cost on ratepayers was extremely important. But also equally important was to make sure that our project brought a net economic benefit to the citizens of Maryland, as well as a net environmental benefit to the citizens of Maryland. The environmental benefit is a pretty easy one to understand, but what does the net economic benefit mean? Well, what it means is that we're making a commitment that when we build our Skipjack 1 project, we're going to funnel 34% at a minimum of our capital expenditures through Maryland-based businesses. We're also going to be making investments in steel manufacturing facilities. We're going to be making investments in port improvements. We're going to be providing for job creation. We're going to bring minority and women-owned businesses into our CapEx for development and construction. So the idea was simply not just to get renewable energy, get it at an affordable rate, but also start to build a supply chain here in the state of Maryland so that when the Skipjack 1 project is finished and the Skipjack 2 project is finished, and more projects happen in the state of Maryland, but oh, by the way, more projects are going to be happening in neighboring states. We want to start to see an economic engine of offshore wind be a Maryland-based one where the job creation and economic benefits happen here in Maryland as well. And that's happening already. The counties that we heard earlier, and again, Danny, sorry for not mentioning Somerset, but you heard about Crystal Steel. We've announced a $70 million investment in their business for Caroline County, right across from their Delmarva business, and we're going to be using Crystal Steel for developing all of the foundation components that support our wind turbines offshore. And the exciting thing about this $70 million investment is that it's going to be going to the two projects that I just talked about, the Skipjack 1 and Skipjack 2 Maryland projects. But in terms of timing, they're actually going to be starting to build components that will be going exported out of the state of Maryland and go to the state of New Jersey for our New Jersey project. And the same will hold true for New York and Rhode Island as well. But guess what? The dollars stay in Maryland, and the jobs stay in Maryland, and the economic benefits are going to be staying in Maryland. So already we're starting to see, even while we're still in the early stages of developing our projects for Maryland, we're seeing Maryland-based job creation happening here, and it's all a result of the offshore wind industry as a whole, and we're happy to be partnering with companies like Crystal on that type of investment as well. So forward-looking, we have some additional investments that we're really excited about. With the award of this second larger Skipjack project, we have entered into a partnership with a Tier 1 submarine cable manufacturing company called Hellenic Cable. Hellenic is based in Greece. They've been a long-time supplier to Orsted, but they have no presence here in the United States to make this very, very special cable that connects the wind turbines together under the water and then eventually brings the power into the land. With the award of the second Skipjack project, we've committed to make a $140 million investment in this company called Hellenic Cable. And Hellenic Cable, together with Orsted, are going to build a new manufacturing facility at the former Bethlehem Steel facility at Sparrows Point in Baltimore. Many of you may know it's now called Trade Point Atlantic. But that investment is going to, again, it's going to serve, it'll bring in 150 jobs. That workforce will be making the cable for our Maryland-based projects, but it'll also be exported out to other states as well. So there'll be a constant flow of job creation that lasts much more than the 4 to 5 years that it takes us to build our Maryland projects. So those are the types of long view investments that we're really excited to be a part of. Also want to share with you that we've made an announcement that we've secured a site for our operations and maintenance center in West Ocean City, Maryland. It's a 12905 Harbor Road, and at that site we're going to be building a $20 million state-of-the-art operations and maintenance center that will serve, once our Skipjack project is built, it'll serve as the technical hub for the teams that keep the offshore wind farm running throughout its 25-year life cycle. So we're excited to be part of Worcester County as well in support of that. And then I would be remiss if I didn't mention our friends at the Archon Training Center. Dave brought them up. They are already in the process of, Dave mentioned the welding school, but they've set up a new specialized offshore wind safety training program that's in Salisbury, and they also use the YMCA facilities in Pocomoke for the specialized training of technicians who have to work in these really challenging conditions. I liken it to kind of going to the face of the moon and trying to change the oil in your car. It's really, really difficult work that our teams have to do, and there's a lot of safety procedures, and they're going to learn that right here in Salisbury and in Pocomoke with Archon. So just a quick slide just to show you where our Skipjack 1 and 2 lease areas. You can see directly due east of the Indian River Inlet is kind of the center point of our Skipjack area that we're going to be building in. And then just to the south, there's a second offshore wind development company. Many may know by the name of U.S. Wind that'll be building. They have their own plans, but they're building a different project that's called Momentum Wind, also serving the Maryland ratepayers through the Maryland Public Service Commission, but just to the south. A little bit about our company. I guess the local community kind of goes without saying. I'm here. My colleague Megan Outen at the front table is our stakeholder relations director. We both live right here in Salisbury, so we're pretty excited about being a part, obviously, of the community, but also sharing what the opportunities of this new industry brings to our area. And then as a company, we have a longstanding history of placing great importance on working with the commercial fishing community, working with non-governmental organizations, working with universities and academics, working with research and development to harbor a full spectrum, if you will, of relationships to not only bring our projects into existence, but do it in concert with concerns that there might be with, as an example, commercial fishing or impact on marine mammals, and the list goes on and on. So we have a long history of doing that as well. So we're proud that we are ranked the most sustainable energy company in the world. Our CEO, Mads Nipper, recently announced that we are one of only 2 companies in the world that's following a science-based target initiative for identifying our cumulative impact on greenhouse gases, and we're going to use that yardstick, if you will, to measure our goals of being net zero emissions by 2025 as a company. We're already producing 98% of our power through green energy today. And then as well, we're not going to stop just with that. We have a goal that by 2020, we'll use that same metric method and industry standard to make sure that our entire supply chain, so our important partners, are also net zero by 2040 as well. So I'm getting the 30-second sign, so I will wrap it up quickly, and I'll bequeath my final 25 seconds to my next colleague. So thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? Okay. My name is Neil Stegman. I am the operations manager for BlueSurf. Here to talk to you a little bit about broadband. In emerging industries, I mean, obviously we've got power and health here. Broadband, as brought to light by the pandemic, is no different. There's been a lot of changes in the industry, and unless you're an insider, it might not be as relevant to you unless you've been faced with some of the challenges. So, bring some of those to light to you, I think. The tech guy can't use this. Okay, here we go. All right, so just a little bit about me and Blue Surf. My name's Neil Stegman. Like I said, I'm the operations manager of Blue Surf and Blue Fiber. We are specializing in rural broadband, basically. We're a small business. I'm feeling a little bit above my pay grade on this panel here because we are a business of less than 20 employees. I have my background in the corporate sector, selling accounting software. But about 8 years ago, my boss attracted me to the rural broadband sector somehow. And when I started, was one of 2 people on the payroll, and we only covered portions of Worcester, Wycomico, and Somerset counties. Now we've got customers all the way from the eastern shore of Virginia up to Cecil County, all 3 Delaware counties, and the majority of those customers are in what's defined as unserved or underserved areas, which is basically people who only otherwise have access to satellite or DSL internet. So as the operations manager, basically what my responsibilities are is planning network expansions, implementing those expansions, and eventually monetizing the network. So why are we talking about broadband right now? Like I said, there's a lot of changes that are happening in the industry and a lot of increased data usage, especially because of the pandemic. Pre-pandemic bandwidth needs were already increasing as technologies advanced, but as the pandemic precipitated, there was a dramatic and instantaneous spike in usage in the internet. Some telecom companies reported a 60% increase in data traffic as opposed to before the pandemic. Can only imagine if there was 60% more cars on the road or 60% more power consumption in basically an overnight type of period. And it's from all uses, from business and education all the way to entertainment and streaming purposes and that sort of thing. As you can see in this chart displayed here, the red bars are cellular data consumption and the brown bars are fixed data consumption. And basically, everything is going to be doubling every 3rd year. And that's a trend that's only going to increase. So what exactly is broadband? Broadband, unlike a lot of other tech words, buzzwords, actually has a definition given to it by the FCC. And it's evolved over time, so it kind of depends on when you're asking the question. Back in 1996, the definition of broadband was 200 kilobits by 200 kilobits upload and download. That's 1/5 of 1 megabit per second, basically. In 2010, it upgraded to 4 megabits per second download by 1 upload. In 2015, it went to 25 and 3. And next year, it's expected to go to 100 by 20, 100 megabits per second download by 20 upload. And even though the definition hasn't officially changed yet, most of the projects, some of which I'm about to talk about right now, are already implementing these increases that are expected to take place, basically. So from today back to 1996, it's a 500-time increase in the definition of broadband in 25 years. So it's pretty nuts. So what's the problem with broadband? Well, first of all, there's increased usage, okay? Broadband infrastructure is just like the rest of American infrastructure. It has an expected lifetime, it's aging, and much of it is past its expected lifetime. Now we add more stress on an aging infrastructure due to the pandemic, and we have some problems. Imperfections in the system that were tolerated a while ago are not tolerated anymore. You know, if your movie you were watching buffered a little bit, that's something you could deal with. Now, if you're on a business meeting, it's something you can't deal with anymore. So that's one of the problems. Second problem is really my focus is the underserved areas. Lots of people, like I said, only have access to satellite, cellular, DSL networks. These services tend to be slow or data capped or both, so it's not great for a lot of high bandwidth usage. Third problem would be affordability, particularly in urban environments. Even people who are considered served by cable or fiber networks, they can't afford it. So it just all affects the accessibility. So all those three factors add up to what's called the digital divide, which I'm sure is another one of those buzzwords that everybody's heard. So it's basically defined as the gap between people who have access to communications technology and those that don't for whatever reason. Okay, so that's the problem. So who are these people that are affected by this? The chart you can see shows access over time starting at the year 2000 and going to today. It's charting rural, suburban, and urban environments. As you can see, suburban people tend to have the highest level of access because of a combination of the population being dense enough for an ISP to want to serve it, and the suburbs tend to be a little bit more affluent so they can afford it. Even the suburbs, though, the underserved percentage is over 20%, and in rural areas it's over 30%. So it's not just an isolated problem, it affects about 1/3 of Americans. So, how can we bridge the digital divide? Money, okay? Money cures a lot of problems if it's used correctly, and fortunately there's a lot of money being thrown at this problem right now. It appears it's going to be spread out as opposed to consolidated. With a lot of government projects, it tends to go to some of the, just larger corporations, and the small businesses get left aside. That doesn't seem to be the case this time, which is great for companies like mine. The FCC is using a lot of reverse-style auctions to subsidize a lot of these underserved areas. So basically, they break it down by census block, and you have ISP A and ISP B bidding on these census blocks that they wish to cover. Whoever comes in with the lowest price gets the subsidy to serve that block. And it's, like I said, it's all based on population density for the most part. I was down at a town hall meeting not that long ago that was organized by the Maryland Broadband Co-op. It was in the Tyaskin bivalve area because they're going to be running some fiber optic cable down there as an open access network. And there were 6 ISPs at a little town hall community center in bivalve. And none of them were the ISPs that you would normally think of, like the Comcast, Verizons of the world. It was all smaller companies like us that are trying to get into the space and serve rural folks. So, where's the money coming from? Okay. The first part is the CARES Act. Maryland is getting $400 million for broadband to do a lot of different things. Okay. First is to subsidize recurring monthly costs to help affordability, like I talked about before. Second is to subsidize devices like computers and tablets for students who are trying to learn. And the third, which is the lion's share of the portion of the allocation, is for new broadband infrastructure, and that's where my focus is. Second part is the infrastructure bill. $65 billion is being allocated to broadband infrastructure from the infrastructure bill. I mean, like that's a made-up number to me. I mean, it's just $65 billion. Okay, so that's going to break down in a couple different ways. First of all, every state is going to get $100 million of that to start with. Okay, then every state is expected to do some sort of study or survey or whatever to identify the needs that they have, and then everybody basically, Rochambeaus for the rest of that money. Then after that, who knows? I mean, the bill is still being passed, everything's still being determined right now, so we don't really know where this is going, but again, it's a lot of money, and it's going to be competed for sure. So back to what I focus on, which is the physical access. So why are there underserved areas? The answer to that is because it doesn't make financial sense for ISPs to cover certain areas. I love Pizza To Go's, Mione's in West Ocean City. I live in Salisbury. They won't deliver a pizza to me for some reason, okay? It's because it doesn't make financial sense for them to do that. And that makes sense. They've got an obligation to their shareholders, and that's how they evaluate coverage areas. It's about population density, And are there enough people there to recoup the money that they're going to be investing, which is very significant. So how can we solve that? How can we make these underserved areas served? Well, companies deploying broadband need to be able to recoup their investment in a reasonable amount of time, usually about 4 to 6 years. The only way to do that is to either raise prices significantly or incentivize it publicly. I'm getting a 30 seconds, so let me hurry up here. Incentivize it publicly, that means public-private partnerships, and that's where the role of companies like mine come in. So, what's it going to cost? That depends, kind of. Here's the plan. Maryland has a plan. Hooray, it's great. Maryland got started on this before a lot of other states. They created the Office of Statewide Broadband. I have to stop. 15 seconds, okay. They created the Office of Statewide Broadband before the pandemic started, so we've got a head start on all this. You can see in this chart here below that the subsidy that an ISP is going to get to cover a certain area depends on the population density. So for instance, a population that only has 1 to 8 people per mile is going to be more subsidized than a population pocket that has 15 people per mile. So that's basically the story. And guess what? It's a bipartisan issue. In a world where there's no bipartisan issues, broadband is a bipartisan issue. So everybody needs to feel good about that. That's it. Thank you.
I have 2 questions, well, maybe 3. One is for Matt. Matt, how many wind farms have you decommissioned so far, and what happens to that decommissioned farm? That's one question. 2, I understand there's been environmental problems with this disposal of some of the components of these wind farms, mainly the turbine blades. Is it a problem, and what is your company doing to solve that problem?
Sure. So can everybody hear me okay? Great. So thanks for those 2 questions. So the first one was with respect to our experience with decommissioning existing wind farms. So one of my slides I think I shared, 1991 we built the first offshore wind farm in Denmark, and 3 years ago we decommissioned that. To my knowledge, that's the very first wind farm that's come to the end of its life cycle and it's required decommissioning. The process of decommissioning it involved very controlled demolition of removing all the above the waterline components, taking out as much of the undersea cable as could reasonably be taken out, and then ultimately with regard to the foundations that were in the seabed, some were taken out, others were not, mainly because it's simply due to the fact that by having something that had been installed for such a long time, it was a great habitat for marine life. And so from an environmental standpoint, the decision was made to keep some of the structures in place because they were so beneficial. So that's the one specific experience that I'm aware of. There may be others, but I can share that one with you. With regard to what happened to those components, they were all disposed of through normal waste streams that were existed for disposal of anything that you might have. Most of the components are not toxic, not hazardous, and so they went through normal waste streams. So that was with that one project, the Vindeby project that I shared earlier. Regarding the disposal of wind turbine blades moving forward, last year our CEO, Mads Nipper, made a commitment that moving forward, Orsted will not be disposing of any turbine blades in landfills or other suitable type structures, and we see this as a key point to as we move forward and we develop next generations of technologies. Just as we take a cradle-to-grave approach to the projects that we develop, we want our manufacturers to take a cradle-to-grave approach to to their supply chain, and it starts with wind turbines. We've made a corporate commitment that we will not be disposing of any wind turbine blades, and they'll be stored until there's a reasonable means for recycling them. So I hope that answers your question.
We have time for one other question. These gentlemen will be here after break or during break, so feel free to pick their brains.
Hey, good morning, guys. Really love this piece. Thank you so much for being here. So my question is for Matt as well. Sorry, Neil. Sorry, Dr. Leonard. The I saw a lot of dollar signs, percentage signs up there. But is there a formula for megawatt production and what that is for projected commerce, as far as like the amount of megawatts you're going to produce off the coast of Maryland and what that might look like as far as generated commerce?
So definitely, we've committed to correlations between investment in Maryland-based businesses. That 34% of the capex of our total project will go through Maryland-based businesses. We've made a commitment to over 1,400 jobs that are going to be Maryland residents that help develop the design and construction of our projects. And then as well, long-term, the operations and maintenance will be done, in a local Ocean City-based operations and maintenance center. I'll be hiring people in Maryland to run the project. So I can give you those metrics are committed to what the spin-on impact is. There are people in our company that have that information. I don't. But yeah, there is a much greater induced impact of our projects. The direct ones are the ones that I can share with you. But absolutely, there's going to be further economic benefits that go just beyond those that I shared.
Big round of applause for Steve, Matt, and Neil. Thank you, gentlemen.